You shrink back, you push that version further into the shadows. But what if, just imagine for a moment, what if you stopped letting fear decide? What if instead of thinking about what could go wrong, you obsessed about what could go right? What if you made decisions like someone who expects to win, not someone afraid to lose? You would be unrecognizable. Not because you added something new, but because you activated what has always been there. That shift begins with awareness. You start noticing when the smaller self is speaking, when it says, rest instead of work, safe instead of leap, later instead of now. And when that voice shows up, you don't argue with it, you override it. You stand taller, you breathe deeper. You make the move anyway. Fear says don't. Strength says do it scared. And the second you take that action, even if your voice is shaking and your hands are trembling, something inside you rewires. Your identity shifts. Confidence isn't a gift, it's built through repetition. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving while fear rides in the backseat. People think they need motivation before action, but it's the opposite. Action breeds motivation. Action builds momentum. Action is the invitation that calls your powerful self to the surface. Every time you act in alignment with the winner inside you, that identity grows. The voice gets louder. The belief gets stronger. Decisions become easier. You stop negotiating with your limitations and start negotiating with your potential. And here's the breakthrough. The battle was never external. Life isn't waiting for you to be lucky. Success isn't waiting for you to be chosen. The world responds when you change, when you show up as the person who knows they will win, not the one who hopes they might. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect timing. You need one moment where you stop listening to the self that doubts and step into the self that decides. So starting now, every time you feel fear, every time you feel resistance, remember that is the doorway. That is the threshold between who you have been and who you were meant to become. The winner is already inside you. The warrior is already awake. All you're doing is choosing which version takes the wheel. Find the other self that knows you will win. Winning doesn't start when you achieve the goal. Winning starts the moment you decide to shift who you are at your core. Not what you do occasionally, who you believe yourself to be consistently. Most people try to change their lives by changing their behavior first. They try new habits, gym routines, business plans, morning schedules, and they stick to it for a week, a month, maybe a little longer. Then resistance hits, stress hits, life gets loud, and they fall right back into who they were or why. Because behavior without identity is temporary. But identity is permanent until you decide to rewrite it. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you'll find a way to struggle even when success is possible. If you believe you're average, you'll sabotage anything that elevates you beyond average. But when you see yourself as the person who wins, who follows through, who is unstoppable, suddenly the actions that once felt impossible become natural. You don't have to force discipline. It becomes who you are. You don't have to beg yourself to show up. Showing up becomes your baseline. That's the power of identity. It dictates behavior without fight. Think about it. A smoker trying not to smoke says, I'm trying to quit. A non-smoker simply says, I don't smoke. One is resisting temptation. The other has no internal conflict. Same action on the outside, completely different. Identity on the inside. People want results without upgrading their identity. They want championship outcomes while still thinking like amateurs. They want transformation without transformation. It doesn't work like that. You can't plant weeds and expect roses. You have to become the person who creates the result, not someone who wishes for it. When you shift identity, everything else aligns. You speak differently. You walk differently. Your energy changes. You stop responding to life like someone who is overwhelmed and start responding like someone who owns the moment. The world doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are willing to become. Winners don't act because they feel like winners. They feel like winners because they act like winners again and again, until it's no longer effort, it's identity. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. Growth is supposed to feel unnatural. You're literally stretching beyond the old version of you. You're breaking patterns that have lived inside you for years. You're interrupting the familiar voice that says, this is who I am. But who you are isn't fixed. It's chosen. The question is, are you choosing from the past or choosing from the future? Because there is a version of you that already exists in the future, confident, disciplined, successful, and the only way to reach that version is to embody them now, not when things get better. Now, imagine waking up tomorrow and behaving as if you were already the person who wins. How would you talk to yourself? How would you work? How would you show up to your dream, to your relationships, to your goals? That's the identity shift. You don't wait to feel ready. You align your actions with the identity you want, not the identity you're trying to escape. And the brain, the nervous system, the mind, they respond. They say, oh, this is who we are now. And they begin to build reinforcement around that identity. Momentum forms. Confidence grows. You start chasing success and start attracting it. You don't become confident by winning. You win because you became confident first. You don't become successful and then think like a winner. You think like a winner and success follows that thinking. This isn't fantasy. It's psychology. It's conditioning. It's deciding who gets to sit in the driver's seat of your life. Is it the self that doubts, hesitates, and reacts, or the self that leads, decides, and dominates? The moment you identify as someone who will win, the game changes. The world starts to mirror back opportunities that weren't visible before. Your conversations change. Your circle elevates. You notice possibilities where you once saw problems. The mind filters reality based on identity. If you believe you're unstoppable, your brain finds reasons to prove it. If you believe you're limited, your brain finds those reasons too. Whatever identity you feed becomes the one that grows stronger. So make the identity shift. Stop hoping for results and start embodying the person who gets them. Look within and say, this is who I am now, not tomorrow, not when it's easy, now. Because identity is the foundation, and winners are built from the inside out. And when your identity aligns with greatness, winning is no longer a question. It becomes your nature. Shift your identity, and the victory becomes inevitable. There's a version of you that already knows how to win. Not a fantasy version, not some distant dream, not someone you hope to become someday. I'm talking about the real you, the one that lives beneath the layers of doubt, fear, hesitation, and history. This version is confident. This version is resilient. This version is unstoppable. And what most people don't realize is that this version isn't waiting to be created. It's waiting to be accessed. Think about that. You don't need to invent the winner within you. You need to connect with it. When you were a child, you didn't worry about failure. You didn't calculate the risk. You didn't doubt whether you deserved to climb, to try, to explore, to dream. You simply went for it. You believed you could. You weren't afraid of falling. And when you did fall, you stood up again like it meant nothing. That was your natural power before the world told you to play safe. Before fear taught you to shrink. Before life convinced you to doubt what you already were. The truth is, your strongest self isn't new. It's the original. The rest is conditioning. And that powerful self still exists right now, under the noise of overthinking, under the wounds of the past, under the expectations of others. It's the voice inside that speaks up when you imagine a life bigger than the one you're living. It's the spark you feel when you think about your goals, your dreams, your potential. It's the part of you that says, I can do this. Even if your circumstances don't agree yet, you felt it. Every time you took a bold step, every time you bet on yourself, every time you refused to settle, that wasn't luck. That wasn't a moment of motivation. That was you stepping into your other self. The self that knows you'll win. The question is, how often do you allow that self to lead? Most of the time, people let fear take the wheel. They let opinions guide their decisions. They let past failures define their future. They walk around with greatness inside them, but they lock it behind stories like, what if I fail? What will people say? I'm not ready. You don't fail because you're not capable. You fail because you never let your powerful self drive long enough to see how far it can go. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow and instead of thinking like the version of you that doubts, you thought like the version that dominates. Imagine facing your goals like someone who expects success instead of fearing failure. You'd move differently. You'd speak differently. You'd take risks that the weaker self would run from. You'd stop negotiating with your excuses. You'd stop treating growth like an option and start treating it like a standard. Because winners don't occasionally act like winners. They live like winners. They show up like winners. They demand more to themselves than anyone else ever could. But here's what's beautiful. You don't have to wait for permission to be that person. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment. You step into that version with decisions, bold decisions. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen that identity. Every time you push through when it's tough, you make that voice louder. Every time you take action despite fear, you move closer to the self that already knows how to win. You have no idea how powerful you become once you decide to stop negotiating with your old self. Your future is not waiting for you to change someday. It's waiting for you to step into the version of you that already exists within. The version that believes, that commits, that follows through. The version that doesn't ask, can I, but declares, I will. You align with that self through repetition, through showing up, through being the kind of person who backs their words with action. People think greatness is earned later, but greatness is embodied first. You meet success when you meet the self that is capable of achieving it. Maybe you've been playing small because you forgot who you really are. Maybe you've been walking like you're ordinary when you were never designed to be. Maybe your other self, your real self, is standing right behind the door, waiting for courage to open it. And the moment you let that self out, the game changes, not gradually, immediately. Your energy commands more. Your decisions sharpen. Your vision expands. You stop living by circumstance and start living by conviction, because the strongest version of you doesn't hope. It knows. So today I connect with that self. Let it speak, let it lead, let it rise. Because the life you want isn't waiting for who you've been, it's waiting for who you truly are. Your other self already knows you will win. It's time to step into it. I want you to think about something that most people run away from their whole lives: pain, struggle, setbacks. We've been conditioned to believe that success is supposed to feel good, that growth is supposed to be smooth, that if it's meant for us, it should come easy. But look back at your own life for a moment. Every breakthrough you've ever had came after discomfort. Every strength you now possess was forged through something that once felt heavy. Pain didn't weaken you, it shaped you. Pressure didn't break you, it built you. Challenges weren't obstacles, they were invitations to rise, but only when you stopped resisting them. Most people spend their lives avoiding discomfort like it's an enemy. They avoid difficult conversations, avoid hard work, avoid risk, avoid failure, and then they wonder why they feel stuck. They want success, but they don't want friction. They want growth, but they want it without growing pains. They want strength without struggle. That's not how greatness works. The person who avoids pain becomes fragile. The person who embraces pain becomes unshakable. Pain is not punishment. Pain is the teacher that separates those who wish from those who win. When life gets tough, you have two options. You can shrink back into the self that doubts, the self that wants comfort, or you can step forward into the self that knows you will win. Pressure is the doorway to discovering what you're made of. And you never know how strong you are until strength is the only option left. Think of a muscle. How does it grow? Not by comfort, not by doing what's easy. It grows by resistance, by tearing so it can rebuild stronger. Your mind works the same way. Your spirit works the same way. Your dreams are calling you into discomfort, not to hurt you, but to prepare you. Every challenge you're facing right now is not a wall, it's a weight. And lifting that weight is what makes you powerful. Pain is the gym for your purpose. Maybe you've gone through things that made you question your worth, question your direction, question whether you'll ever rise. Maybe you lost something, someone, an opportunity. Maybe betrayal cut deep. Maybe life hit you so hard you forgot what winning feels like. But hear me, just because you were wounded doesn't mean you're weak. The fact that you're still here means you're strong. The fact that you're listening means there's still fight inside you. Your scars are not proof you were broken. They're proof you healed. When things fall apart, they're not falling apart to ruin you. Sometimes life breaks things down so it can rebuild you better. Sometimes the struggle is not the end. It's the beginning of a stronger version of you. And when pain shows up, you get to choose how you interpret it. Some see pain and say, why me? The empowered self says, try me. Because winners don't avoid storms, they learn to walk through them. They use the rain to grow. They use the fire to forge a new identity. Pain creates perspective. It teaches you what matters. It builds humility, hunger, discipline. It strips away the unnecessary and reveals the essential. And every time you survive something you thought would break you, confidence expands. You stop fearing what could go wrong because you remember everything you've already overcome. Pain becomes proof of your potential, not evidence of your limitation. There will be days where you don't feel strong, days when quitting will whisper, days when the old self will try to pull you back into comfort. But remember, comfort never made anyone legendary. You weren't born for easy. You were born for impact. Your other self, the one that knows you will win, is activated in the moments when most people give up. When the world says stop, and you take one more step. When fear says no, and you say yes anyway. Growth happens on the edge of discomfort. So instead of resisting the struggle, walk into it with purpose. Instead of fearing the pain, ask what it's here to teach you. Instead of running from challenges, lean in and let them refine you. Because the path to your greatest victory will always run through the valley of resistance. And the moment you stop seeing pain as a barrier, and start seeing it as fuel, everything changes. You become unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Pain is not your enemy. It's the fire that forges the self who knows you will win. And there comes a moment when everything changes, not when life magically becomes easier, not when circumstances suddenly fall into place, but when you make a decision so powerful that it demands a new version of you. Decisions shape destiny. We forget that sometimes. We think time changes things. We think motivation changes things. We think waiting for the right moment will open the door, but nothing changes until you decide. One decision can redirect your entire path. One decision can stop a generational pattern. One decision can awaken the self inside you that knows you will win. Most people wake up every day letting life decide for them. They let moods decide. They let fear decide. They let opinions decide. They wait for clarity, but clarity comes through action. They wait for confidence, but confidence comes from stepping up. They wait for the perfect time, but perfection never arrives. Life responds to those who decide. Your future doesn't belong to the person who hopes. It belongs to the person who commits. Think about any defining moment in your life. The ones you remember vividly. It wasn't the day you thought about change. It wasn't the day you talked about change. It was the day you decided with certainty, no more. I go forward now. That's what decision feels like. You can sense it in your nervous system. Your energy shifts. Your posture changes. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop entertaining doubt. You stop looking for backup plans because you've burned the boats. There's no going back. Greatness is not built on convenience. It's built on decisions that stretch you, challenge you, and demand more from you. And sometimes that decision is uncomfortable. Sometimes it means letting go of habits that once felt good but kept you small. Sometimes it means walking away from people who don't see your vision. Sometimes it means doing what others refuse to do. And sometimes it means betting on yourself when no one else believes, because destiny is not handed, it's chosen. I want you to imagine the strongest version of yourself standing right in front of you. The version that follows through, the version that keeps promises to themselves, the version that doesn't wait, they act. What separates you from that version is not talent, not resources, not luck. It's one decision, the decision to step into that identity fully, without hesitation, without conditions, without escape routes. Every champion you admire made a decision long before they won. They decided who they were going to be. They decided what they would tolerate and what they would no longer accept. They decided failure wouldn't define them. They decided persistence would. Winning doesn't come from 1,000 opportunities. It comes from one decision repeated 1,000 times, a decision to show up, a decision to push through, a decision to believe even when the evidence isn't visible yet. And let's be honest, decisions aren't hard because we don't know what to do. Decisions are hard because we fear what happens after we make them. We fear change. We fear discomfort. We fear losing what feels familiar. Even if familiar is killing our potential, you don't need more information. You need more courage. You need to trust that the part of you that wants more is not being unrealistic. It's remembering who you truly are. The moment you make a real decision, the universe starts to move. Opportunities appear that you couldn't see before. People show up. Energy aligns. Maybe not instantly, but unquestionably, because life rewards commitment. Doors open for the person who walks toward them instead of waiting for them to open first. When you decide with absolute certainty, failure isn't final, it becomes feedback. Obstacles don't stop you, they sharpen you. And the voice in your head shifts from can I to I will. Decisions create identity. Identity creates action. And action creates results. But it starts with a decision so strong it pulls the future into the present. A decision that says, I'm done being who I was, I'm stepping into who I'm meant to be. That is the moment you connect with the other self, the one that knows you will win. That is the moment your life begins to take a new shape. Maybe slowly, maybe dramatically, but undeniably forward. So ask yourself right now with absolute honesty, what decision have you been avoiding? What decision scares you because you know it will change everything? What decision would the winning version of you make today? Not someday. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is one decision. Make the decision that declares you are the one who wins. There's a moment you have to understand will always come on the journey to greatness, the test. Life doesn't hand out rewards without checking if you're prepared to receive them. The moment you commit to winning, the universe asks a simple question: how bad do you want it? Not in words, not in hope, in action, in resilience, in how you respond when things go wrong instead of right. Because anyone can feel motivated when it's sunny. Anyone can dream when everything flows, but who are you when the storm hits? Who are you when you get hit with rejection, doubt, setbacks, unexpected obstacles? That is where the other self must show up. The version that refuses to fold. The version that says, I will find a way or I will create one. The world doesn't test you to break you. It tests you to reveal you. To strip away the weaker voice that hesitates and uncover the one that knows you will win.